Boys, welcome everyone to this very important occasion tonight. Shane, you look like you need to say something.
Well, I was just thinking, we invited Pav back up on stage because he's got another 3 pages of his speech to get through.
Did you like it, Sean?
Well, I need to go to the toilet. I think there was a lineup, pretty sharp lineup after. I loved it, Pav, by the way.
Your tie is really nice, by the way. It suits your eyes.
This morning.
Is that sunburn orange? What's going on there?
Well, yeah, Pav loved a T-shirt that I had for quite some time. I think it was a travesty or something. What was it?
I thought it was sunburn orange, but I'm not that au fait with colours that well, Shawnee. But you're pretty good with that sort of stuff.
Always. Now, Pav, what a great turnout, mate. 1,000 odd people here to see the big snoz and the large thighs. It's been a great night, all right. You must be feeling pretty good about it.
Not at all, but yeah, thanks for bringing the schnoz up again. No, look, it is great, and I've mentioned a couple of you guys in the speech. It's fantastic to have a couple of past players here. So, you know, there's a number over in the corner here. We're looking forward to catching up later on current players. So thank you for being here, and looking forward to the roast.
Shorty, did you notice in the highlights package there was one thing missing?
What was that, Brownie?
Not one handball.
Well, tell me when you've seen it. You played with him for a decade. You were drafted in the same draft with him in the top 10. You never saw a handball,
Still
did you?
waiting. Didn't see one in under 18s when we played against South Australia. Still waiting.
Maybe later on in the
There's
show
no
I'll be
need
able
when
to
you
show
kick it
you
that well, mate.
a particular date of a handball. It's going to blow your socks off. Hayes, when we first started at Fremantle back in 2000, well, you guys got drafted in 99. What are your memories of the big guy?
First impressions, I picked up Matthew Pavlich for his first training session. Had a look at him. Wow, big quads. Looked up a little bit. Wow, bigger ass. Looked up a little bit further. What a snoz. And of course, he didn't make it through the first session. I thought, what have we got here? Who's this soft bloke from South Australia? Picked him up. Didn't get a chance to take him home because he was in hospital. But it was a great introduction to Matthew Pavlich. But in all seriousness, you know, when you're training and you're about to obviously faint on your first session, most blokes would have put their hand up and said, I'm done, take me off, that's enough. But I think it was testament to his character at a young age that he pushed through that. He didn't want to show his teammates in that first session what he was made of, that he wasn't soft, and he just pushed through it, and in the end he ended up collapsing. So I think we learned a lot about the man on that very first session at Fremantle. It was at Aquinas College.
I think we need to fill in everybody about the actual day itself. Brandon, do you remember much about that? Because we go through our training. I know Drummy's here somewhere as well. So we used to train for a couple of hours at Aquinas College, just down on the river for everybody. A lower oval, which is great view when we're running around the place. At the end of training, it was 6 1Ks, which isn't easy at all. Do you remember that, Brownie?
Yeah, I do, Shawnee. And Pav had actually come in very late from South Australia the night before, so it wasn't acclimatised. Preparation probably wasn't up to the standard it is now, and a little bit dehydrated. And Drummy obviously didn't have a strength and conditioning guy or any of those sorts of guys taking control. I think we did 2 hours of skills before the 6 1Ks and
4 hours.
4 hours.
4 hours.
Okay, 4 hours, and it was a really good session. And the 6 1Ks we all thought were going well until the last one came up, and he's a big guy, and about halfway around the lap, he was about the size of Peter Bell and getting smaller, and trying to find his mouth guard, which didn't actually wear. He didn't have one in. So next we knew, he's in the back of Paddy Watson's van, throwing up everywhere, and never offered to clean it, by the way, and he's in intensive care. First day of training. Welcome to Fremantle Footy Club, Matty Pavlich.
I was behind him at the time. I think it was in, was it? That's how well I was going.
Can you repeat that? You
I
were
was
behind
him at the time, which
Building his
running 1
confidence.
kilometre
Building
was-
his confidence.
Yeah, I know. New bloke. Give him a chance. And I just saw his ass just went lower and lower and lower to the ground until he absolutely collapsed. And then I thought, you beauty, I'm no longer last. And I kept on running. And I got up and beat him in that one.
Hey, Pav, so when it was all taking place, well, we always talk about that in particular, and, you know, the fact that you thought you had your mouth guard in. Stevie Platt was panicking, who was our head trainer at the time, and Paddy Watson were, because they thought that you were going to choke at one stage. Do you remember any of this stuff taking place?
Not one bit of it. I remember being physically, or I vomited or spewed up after the 5th 1K, and Jimmy Bridle, who was our strength guy at the time, strength and conditioning guy, came up and said, "Oh, hey, you're travelling," and I was feeling shit house, but I absolutely said, I didn't want to show a chink in the armour. First day, you don't want to show any chink in the armour whatsoever. So I said, yeah, no worries, I'm ready to go. So I think we were doing them on about 5 minutes. So, if you ran a 3:30, 1K, a minute and a half to rest, and away you go again. And that was really solid for me back then. It still is now. So yeah, we've taken off in this last one, and I remember I was sort of running with a couple of the other key position blokes, and Anthony Grover, Daniel Shell, Brendan Fuster, and most of those guys actually ran quite well. I started to drop off the back of this group, and obviously Hayes as well off the back.
Maybe
of
I was in the other group.
Key position player, of course, and started to drop back, and I remember getting about 2/3 of the way and really struggling, Mac, and thinking I'm not going to give up. I need to keep digging in here. And the next thing I remember was about 4 hours later waking up in hospital, and I had all manner of IV drips and this nurse who was really good looking. But that's all I remember. I remember this good looking nurse, and that's about it.
Do you remember the sponge bath?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It's a really good story, Shawnee, but the real reason why he kept going was he didn't want to let Clive Waterhouse or Tony Modra down. Childhood heroes, had the mullet flapping in the wind, didn't want to let him down.
That's a really good point, Brownie. Hey, Webby, when you first met Pav, what was your impressions?
Yeah, look, obviously coming to the club and knowing all these guys that were obviously there, it was a great experience for me. Obviously with the big Pav, his first impressions were obviously a guy that I'd heard the story, obviously of your first training session, and didn't want that to happen to me. But I thought his experience already and his enthusiasm, his intent to want to try and train the best he could all the time, every time, and his professionalism was the first thing I really picked up, and something I really tried to pride myself on to follow in his footsteps. Obviously the career he's been able to forge out is obviously testament to the way he's been able to do that. So, well done to you, obviously, Matty. And, I think obviously a lot of guys in the room, even the young kids coming through now, obviously can really learn from everything you've done and showed the way you've been able to train and obviously get your way all the way through these games so far.
Well said, Webby. One of the other things when Pav just arrived at the club, which we all kind of talk about the first couple of years in particular, is the Subaru Leone, his car that he would just drive around. And no one had electric windows back in the day. No one. But there was Pav and his Subaru Leone getting around like Hollywood. Hey, so you get a Guernsey in that one?
I got a few Guernseys in that, but he crashed it about 5 times in the space of 6 months, didn't you?
Yeah, well, not long after the passing out intensive care incident, we had this session down at Port Beach, and it was basically my first session back, recovery session, before we went back to the club for some weights and a review meeting. And we're heading back from Port Beach, for those people in the room that know it well, going across the traffic bridge, and there I am, the young, just turned, I was still 17 at the time, 17-year-old, wanted to, all these guys were dodging in and out of the morning traffic across the traffic bridge, and I was just sort of sitting back and made a scene day one. I didn't want to make a scene day two. And sure enough, because all the guys were zigzagging out of traffic, I've looked down to change the radio station, and Troy Cook's car was about 30 centimetres in front of mine when I looked back up, and it went smack straight up at the back of Cookie's rear end. And Adrian Fletcher sort of was behind me, the captain at the time, and ended up like he veered past me and ended up next to me, pissing himself laughing. So anyway, the cars have sort of taken off, and I'm sort of, geez, how's my... you can't stop in the middle of the bridge, so I've taken off, and as I'm driving, the bonnet has come back up onto... Thank God my window was open, because I caught it, and I had to push it back down, and then drove back to the footy club. So day two, I've passed out day one. Day two, I've ended up smashing Troy Cook's car. I think he's in the room, Cookie. Have I actually paid for that ute? Sorry, mate, if I haven't. But it was a shocking start.